We are
And we
live.
are
Hi everyone.
live.
Yep.
Hello. Hi.
Hello,
It is
everyone.
it is obviously Thursday again. And I think there's going to be more people working from home this week, considering what's happening. So hello to everyone who is watching right now. It's our pop-up career Q&A. If you have not seen this before, it streams on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And it's basically a place where we answer any career-related questions that you have. So yeah, if you have any of these questions, just ask it in the comment below, right? And we'll see it and we'll pick it up and we'll go. So anyway, say hi if you're there so that we can see you.
Yep. Hi, everyone. So,
Hello.
just before we start, I also want to highlight that we're featuring Wipro Unza. So, Wipro is the leading personal care manufacturing and marketing FMCG company. They're hiring right now for these 4 positions on screen. So, if you're interested, just head on to wopjobs.com/Wipro. That's the link that you see on top of the slide over there. So, yeah, learn more about the company and hopefully you get to find your dream job with them, right?
Nice.
So, with that, let's move on to our first question. And hi, everybody who just joined us.
Oh
Let
yeah,
us know
hi
if you're
Nur Azima.
Hi.
Hello Haja Nur
Nadira
Fadira.
hello.
and
Yeah.
Kai Xin.
Kaisin,
Hello.
hello.
Hi. Thanks for
Hi.
joining us. Yeah. So yeah, if you have any career questions again, just comment from wherever you are, and we'll be picking up from this screen, right?
Mm.
But let's pick up some questions that we didn't get to answer previously. So the first one is, my company won't let me work from home. Well, this is quite interesting, Derek, because you just brought up that a lot of people are now working from home.
Yep.
But the full situation is, according to the person, is, oh, I'm currently interning at a pretty big company as a video editor and a digital marketer. I take public transport to work every day located in the city center. With the rising cases of COVID-19 infections, I'm worried about my own safety and want to work from home. I've asked my superiors if I could, but they wouldn't allow me to. Most, if not all, of my work can be done remotely, and I receive instructions through emails only, so I do not understand why they don't let me work from home. Is there any other way I can ask for remote working?
I think in this kind of situation, it's a very strange time, by the way. So like everyone's kind of new to this. So both yourself and your company is new to this, so people don't really know what to do, what's the line. I would kind of go strictly from, I suppose, based on rules. I don't know what's the right word. There is really no obligation, like in some sense, for them to um allow you to work from home. If that makes sense, there's no obligation, right? But most companies I find would allow it if it makes sense, lah. Right. So and I think that's the situation with a lot of companies at the moment. So like a call is made at like management level, and yeah. So if your company doesn't really allow it, it's actually pretty tough. I'm not really sure what the right answer is. If you really want to make a bigger deal out of it, you might want to try going higher, or maybe send an email to your CEO, to address that concern, right? So even if it's not allowing you to completely to work from home, at least like just bring up the fact that, look, I have some concerns, and I am actually able to deliver my work remotely. What do you suggest we can do? And I think it's fair, lah, right? Given the current situation, a lot of people are obviously a bit concerned about what's going on.
I think it's understandable that everyone is worried for their individual safety, but maybe in this case, because your employer is not very convinced, you should also position it in a way that how it can benefit the company instead of just you as an employee. Like maybe commuting to work takes more time, and like if you don't commute to work, you can actually complete more work, and like you can still deliver your work on time and everything, and also minimize like the chances of employees getting infected through commuting with public transport and everything, things like that. Yeah, it should not just be like, oh, because it can endanger me. So
Yeah, don't sound too selfish, right?
yeah,
Like explain it from like the betterment of everybody. Because you take public transport, you're mixing and mingling with everybody public transport. It's quite dangerous. But sometimes it's like, because as you stated, you work in a very big company, right? Sometimes it's like these companies, they just have to follow, the official, what's the official word on whether things are supposed to close down or not, right? Because yes, although you have your work can be done remotely, sometimes it's not like a direct manager's call to do so. Unfortunately, a lot of departments in your company might not be able to do the same work remotely. So like they can't be very selective on, like how come this team can work remotely and the other one is like, is this the team's life worth more than the other one? So like, maybe they are already planning something behind the scene to make sure like this is company wide, but it may take a bit longer because of the size of the company. Just chiming from a different perspective. But yeah, from what you can do, just, perhaps you can just take what we said previously and let your input be heard.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think because you're still an intern, so there are certain, like, I think the situation is a bit specific as well, where it can be frustrating when you're trying to voice out, but nobody can. But because you're an intern, maybe, they need somebody to actually be able to look at you and keep track of your work. So maybe they can't let you just go home and work remotely so quickly. But I guess like what you can do right now is, there are SOPs in place. Just try to follow them to the best that you can. So you do your part, and overall, I'm sure that if the situation requires it, your company will make the right decision at that point. Yeah. So do your best for now.
All right, then. That's all our thoughts on this. Let's move on to the next question then, right? So I have been working in a bank for 2 years. I'm working for an opportunity to jump. Can I know how is the banking industry performing in this current pandemic? Is it true that it's a headcount freeze in most places? Hard to say. We're not in the banking industry.
We're not in the banking industry.
Headcount freeze in most places. Well, actually, maybe I kind of address it in this way, from partially data and partially stories and anecdotes that I've heard. There are some industries that are very badly affected. The obvious ones like travel, tourism, hospitality, F&B. In some cases are badly hurt because less people go and eat. So those are very obvious, and those are genuinely, I suppose, losing more money. Maybe they can't afford to hire, etc. And then there's a small group of employers that are not affected at all. In fact, they're growing. A lot of tech companies, for example, are still growing. Because people are moving more on the internet now. So those are growing. Now, actually, in the middle, right? And I imagine banks will kind of fall somewhere here. In the middle, most other industries, I think, are affected somewhat. I think every industry is affected somewhat, but maybe not to the degree where they can't hire, if that makes sense, right? Not to the degree where, they really can't afford to hire. And most of it is probably just by choice. So there are certain companies might think, let's just be cautious. Let's not hire now and just wait and see. But they can afford to hire, right? So I think this actually goes mostly, if you're in the middle here, this actually depends on the company, not by industry. So within every industry, I actually see that there are some companies still hiring and some have decided to be more conservative. So one of the things that I would probably say is that, and I've actually posted this on LinkedIn recently also, is that there are a lot of companies that see this as an opportunity to hire good talent, because a lot of good talent have actually lost their jobs. And they're still hiring. So because they know they can afford to hire, even though their business is somewhat affected, they're thinking quite long term, and they say, let's just recruit anyway. So that's a long answer to basically tell you that no particular industry other than those that are really affected is really frozen. There are still companies within each industry that's hiring, and you can apply, right? And most of these companies are thinking quite long term, and there's actually an opportunity. I suppose if you join a company that's thinking very long term and investing in talent, in some sense, it probably means it's a good sign, right? If you join companies like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything else to add on that? I don't know. No? All right.
Yeah.
So very well answered by Derek right there.
Yeah. So anyone if you're just jumping in, by the way, again, you can ask any career related question in the comments. On LinkedIn, YouTube, on Facebook, and we'll pick it up and we'll answer it live here.
Yeah.
So let's go to the next question.
Yeah, just a quick question from Alvin. I think I can just answer this quickly. Oh, is WOBB a good platform to look for experienced interior designer? We have jobs like from various ranges, from entry level to like, a bit more, that requires a few years of experience. So we can't really tell you what's good to look for, but we do have a good number of interior designer jobs, right? So yeah, just keep looking and look for the employer that's right for you, Alvin. Yeah, check us out, right? So we have a question from Ayman. May I know what's your take on the entry-level job post for asking for years of experience? Would an entry-level job won't require any experience and will provide trainings for applicants? Yeah, we got this question before, right?
Yeah.
Well, you are right to ridicule it a bit,
Yep.
Ayman.
You're right.
You're absolutely spot on. Yeah, entry level means entry level. So I think sometimes when employers write job descriptions, they try to write this almost not near perfect but overly perfect for ideal candidate, right? So I'm not really sure what the entry level job is with experience, but maybe they imagine someone who's interned a lot, or someone who has actually worked but willing to join them like a fresh graduate, on that kind of salary. So they're going to write it in such a way where this super perfect candidate. But in reality, of course, most cases this person doesn't actually exist. So what I would say, and not only do they not exist, but I think the employer, the person they end up hiring is not the person that they're describing in the job description anyway. So if you think you're about 70-80% there, like, you can apply, like, don't overly try to match every line of the job description. Yeah, no experience, apply anyway, right?
Yeah.
They did say entry level.
I think a lot of the times this happens because like employers will go onto other websites, or they'll take a previous postings and they'll just put the same requirements into it because they think it's the same job, and they don't change the requirements. Sometimes it's things like that. So if you're pretty sure that it's an entry-level job, give it a go. But that's to say, I think one thing I want to talk about is like, don't expect to fully get every single training or like educated about the job the moment when you get a job. If you can, try to prepare yourself with some skills that can be applied to the job so that it increases your chances of landing a job as well. Because they're hiring you to work there, not hiring you to just learn. Yeah. So you should do some learnings on your own as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you should go in expecting training by the employer. You should prepare yourself beforehand. Really, you should know what I know because it's an entry-level job, you probably may not have the relevant or enough skill, but you should have some skill to be able to do the job. So like what Derek said earlier, you probably did like internships before that, and something you can kind of cover the basics of the job and not go in with nothing and expect the company to teach you everything.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so like, when, yes, like what everybody say, you don't need experience, but even watching certain like things online or whatever, the extra step that you go to, any online resources that you have to learn, right? If you put that in like your CV, like, oh, I completed this course, or like, I take my free time to learn all this, comparing you with another fresh graduate, right, who's looking for entry-level job, who didn't do that, it's a bonus. It shows initiative that you're learning. I might not, like, as an employer, sometimes like when I see that for my marketing interns, right, learning certain like marketing courses online, might not be relevant to whatever they might be doing with us, but it shows that this person has a really good attitude and willing to learn. So yeah, definitely first choice over the others.
Yeah, so one small point, right, Ayman, even though that's not exactly your question, on the point of training, just be very careful during the interview process, because I find this happens sometimes with some entry-level people, that they overly emphasize on the training and like asking questions about training during the interview process. And even if the employer does provide training, when they are constantly hearing that, I want you to train me during the interview process, right? Because you have to realize it's a competition. There are many people competing for that same role. They're going to pick the candidate, right, that seems more willing to prepare for the role rather than expecting to be trained. So I just repeat, like, even if the employer does provide training, they're going to pick the candidate that's more willing to prepare for the role. So yeah, just be very, very cautious about focusing too much about asking for training for you, because you're competing for the role, right?
Yep. So that's all our thoughts for this question. Let's move on to the next one, right? So is one asked, what are signs if the company reply back to the application for months? Is it too rude? Sorry, we don't really get what you mean by the signs.
Yeah.
Like, I guess the sign if never reply back companies, they didn't reply at all.
That's your sign.
Yeah.
They didn't reply. Yeah. What are the signs if the companies never replied back the application for months?
I feel like maybe he never finished his sentence. Like, is it too rude to message them or email them? Maybe. It feels sort of hanging a bit.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Or what does it mean?
Maybe you can clarify yourself.
Yeah.
Do you mean is the company being rude, or do you mean it? Yeah, or did you mean to ask whether you can message them or not? Is it too rude to message them?
Yeah, we'll look forward to your clarification.
Yeah.
Right? All right. So next question then. Amma has asked, currently I'm working in an accounting area that can be, say, too specific. If I want to jump, will my experience be counted as well, or will it be treated as, fresh hiring?
Depends on what you want to jump to.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you want to jump to, Ahmad?
Yes. So I assume he wants to jump to something that's not accounting.
Yeah.
I assume,
Maybe
right?
Something that's not relevant at all.
Yeah. And so if it's something that's not relevant at all, then yes, you will be treated as a fresh hire. And if you are deciding to do this, then I suppose the earlier the better. Right. So you imagine if you're a accountant with, say, 10 years of experience, this is an extreme example, and you suddenly decide you want to do digital marketing at a fresh graduate level, let's say. I mean, it's going to be challenging. You're going to compete with like a whole bunch of fresh graduates, and many of them maybe come from a marketing background. And you might think that your accounting background is an advantage, but many employers may not see it as an advantage. They may see it as a disadvantage because you're somehow trained in a different way, and maybe they don't believe. I'm not saying this is true, but I'm just saying like many of them would think that if you're trained to be an accountant, you may not be able to think like a digital marketing person, as an example. So I would prefer hiring someone that's fresh. So that's my answer to you. If it's a different role, yes, you'll be treated as fresh hiring. If it's the same role, then the obvious answer is obviously your experience adds up if you're going to another accounting job.
Yeah, and I think depending, let's say if you're 5, 6, or maybe even 10 years of experience and you're trying to move, it doesn't mean that they'll treat it as your past 10 years of experience completely like non-existent. But if you're thinking that, my 10 years of experience will still get me a higher salary, chances are it might not help. Maybe they'll adjust it so that they won't give you a super fresh graduate kind of salary, but it's probably not good to expect something like that. Your experience, unless really relevant, won't really help you get I think for most people, the concern about changing jobs is the salary part. So most likely you have to think of yourself that you'll be a junior or a fresh graduate.
Yeah, well answered. Next question then. So, hi there. I'm currently in my last semester of my degree. Is it normal for me to apply for an internship even though I still have 10 more weeks until my semester ends? Very normal to start early. Because sometimes just speaking from experience, right? Some larger companies, they might take a bit like a month to get back to you. You definitely don't want to be like in the last 1 or 2 weeks from your last semester that only find job, right? That's expecting a very, very fast response from employers. Because bigger companies usually got a lot of people applying to the company, and it might take them a while to get to you. So you really got to be quite realistic with and quite early on with when you start applying. I guess especially now, right, when there's so many people fighting for opportunities, even graduates who are looking for internship right now. What are your takes on it, guys?
I think it depends on, because the question is not very clear. It depends on whether the internship is required by the uni. But if you are asking in the sense that the internship is not required, it doesn't matter even if you've already graduated and you are applying for internships. or you've not graduated. So that does not matter. But if, like what Brian said, if your internship is required by your uni, in 10 weeks, I think still possible for you to apply for an internship, but you're cutting very close. So you should start as soon as possible.
Yeah, I agree with both Brian and Eleanor. It's easier to apply earlier than to get an internship last minute. I've seen before people like, sending in an email say, I'm applying for this internship. I'm available starting next week. There's still processes that you have to go through. Chances are it's better to secure it earlier than last minute and expecting somebody to hire you the next day. Yeah, so it's actually better. Earlier the better.
Yeah, I want to add something very quick to this. Actually, right now, I find a lot of people who are graduating are using the internship to shop for jobs or a career. And what I mean is that if you're applying for a full-time job, that means like normal, like fresh graduate salary and stuff like that, obviously the competition or the barrier to get that job is harder because it's like full-time employment, right? And if you join this full-time job and say 3-4 months later you realize actually I hate being an accountant or I hate doing sales, you want to switch to something else, that doesn't look so good on your CV lah, right? So a strategy some people actually take is, if I apply for internships, the barrier to entry is lower because the employer knows that it's a short-term thing, they're not paying you a lot, and you're really genuinely there to contribute and to experience the job. They would hire you, so it's easier to get hired. And then at the same time, when you're experiencing that role, you can decide, right? Like, do I like it or do I not like it, right? And do you enjoy doing it? And if you enjoy doing it and the company can see that you're very good at it, then sometimes they might convert you to a full-timer. Or if you do it for about 3 months, you say, actually, I don't like it, and then you switch, your CV still looks fine, because people can see that you were interning. So again, this is a very good strategy if you can afford to do this, but something to think about, right? It's a good way, and it also addresses questions like how do you pick your first job and all that, how do you land a good first job. So these are good strategies.
Yep, good advice. So yeah, hope that really helps you, whoever asked that. So moving on to another question, right? It's about an internal transfer. I'm thinking to transfer to another department, but I'm not sure how to talk to my manager on it. How do I talk to my manager that can increase my chance to transfer?
Well, have you seen other people transfer in your company before? Maybe I will ask this question. If you have seen it, then perhaps you should find out how it was done. In what circumstances was that transfer actually made? Because I think every company looks at this very differently. Some are very strict, right? You barely see any internal transfers, and then some do allow it, but then there's like a formal process, and maybe they will also explain the rules of how it's done. So by formal process means that you have to actually see there's a vacancy in another department, there's a way to apply for that job, you actually have to interview with the department head or whatever, So if it does happen, do find out. I assume if you're asking this question, there is no process. I would actually say that number one, you have to make sure that you're doing a pretty good job in what you're doing right now for your manager to even entertain this conversation. Yeah, let me just put it that way. Because if, let's say, your manager doesn't have a good impression about your attitude to work, right? And then you're saying that, I give an example, you're doing sales, and let's say they don't think you are trying hard enough in sales, and now you want to do marketing, right? Not only will your manager kind of not entertain this conversation, the head of marketing is not going to entertain this conversation because they don't have that good impression of you either. So you might want to start by that, like making sure that you're doing your job really well. And if you're doing your job really well, and people can see that you're a talent in the company, when you bring this conversation up to your manager, right? And if you kind of communicate to them in the sense where, I think I really prefer doing that, and I hope you can transfer me, but if you don't transfer me, I might end up looking outside the company, right? Then they have a reason to say, okay, why don't we let this person switch rather than losing a talent, if that makes sense. So I'm not asking you to threaten to leave, but in some sense, what you're showing is that you're a valuable member of the company, but you do have a certain thing you want from your career. So either if the company can give it to you, you're very happy to stay, But if they can't, at some point, you will still want to explore this other path. So that's a good way to do it. But remember, you have to be good at your job. If you're not good at your job, people won't entertain this conversation at all.
Because it's like your manager is sticking their neck out for you, you know. They're referring you to a department, right? So they gotta justify why you're so good to be transferred to the other one. Like what Derek said, right? It's not threatening, but it's like, you know what, you kind of have to say that your what you're doing now is not really aligned with your career goals, right? But you would still very much like to be in this company and support this company, instead of like looking elsewhere. So like definitely, like, you know, if your skills justify it, you know, I'm sure they will understand, right, that yes, I still want to contribute to the company's mission, but in a different way, in a different department, right? And if they see that you are good, why would they? If it's possible, why I don't think they would want to kick out such a valuable employee, lah. Yeah, that's my take on it. Anybody else?
Nope, I think it's all answered.
Yeah.
Good.
All right, then.
We do have a lot of questions today, actually.
Yeah,
so I think we probably have time to maybe squeeze in two. Let's see.
Yep. Right. So let's move on to this one, right? So I was working in one industry, and later I want to work in a different industry without any experience. What's the best way to get an entry-level job? Because it's own industry, to get a job during this pandemic, I've decided to go different industry that I think I can do. What is your advice on that? I think it's meaning that his current industry is a bit difficult to get a job right now, right? And he's willing to start all over again from an entry-level position. What is your advice on that? Well, I think we kind of like answered this before, so let me just quickly summarize this. Anybody can chime in later. Well, it's good that you recognize that, you know, you might want to go to an entry-level job, so you should expect the things that come with it, like a lower salary, entry-level salary, right? I think from our past questions that we got, we answered it this way as well. Our advice is don't go into the job like expecting people to train you without any prior research and knowledge and any like self-taught experience, because there's so many things online. Like we always like to use this example, and like if you want to go to digital marketing, right, because a lot of people want to go to that right now, don't just go in like, hey, I want to work as digital marketer, then I have no training at all. People will ask you, why do you want to be this? You can't say that, oh, because it's like the cool thing, everybody's doing it right now, so I want to join here and you should train me. That's not how it works, right? No matter how you spin it, if you don't have any, like, you know, you didn't go for any online courses, free online courses, no initiative of teaching yourself, there's no way you can spin it without sounding it like that. Right? So the best way to be prepared is to take your own initiative with if it's something that you're able to self-teach, right? Not every job you can, you know, you can't be self-taught to go into the medical field, but if it's something that you can, right? Yeah, please do so. That's like one of the best ways to justify why you want to transfer there.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. Because you're mentioning that it's due to the pandemic that you're kind of not able to get back into this industry. So you have to be very careful when you interview with this new industry that that's not the main thing that you're saying. Because what they're gonna start thinking is that. So I have situations where people ask me, oh, I prefer going to, say, a data job because that's recession proof. That's the wrong reason to go into any job. You know, and the employer will be like, what? Because it's recession proof, not because you like doing data, you know, or because you couldn't find a job in your previous industry, so now you want to do sales, like that. And so many questions, because they will worry if you have the proper motivation to actually do it, or you just simply want any job that can pay money. Because again, I've said you're competing for a role, you know, a lot of people want that same job. So you really have to show that you have a genuine interest. And also you have to also address that question, like, if your industry that you were with before kind of opens up back to normal, are you going to go back? You know, because that is what I'll be thinking as an employer. So now you say you want to do marketing, I hire you as a marketeer, and then later, you know, let's say the hotel industry goes back to normal, and you say, you know what, Derek, I prefer hospitality. Like, what? You know, so you need to, as much as it is true that your industry is not hiring, you can see this more as, well, since it's not hiring, I guess this is an opportunity to rethink what you want in your career, an opportunity to hit reset. And after thinking through this, like, maybe marketing is what you want. Yeah. And I think when the employer understands that, then they will be more willing to give you a chance. But you have to mean it though. So I hope you don't use what I'm saying right now as like this magical sentence. I actually think that since this is the case with your industry, really sit down and think, now that this industry is not there, if you could start again, right? What would you have picked? If you were a fresh graduate again, knowing what you know now, what would you have picked? And why would you pick this? And if you can answer this question, I think the employer will find you will give a better answer.
Yep. And just to add on to what Brian mentioned earlier, like the skills, because you're going into a new industry. If you're wondering where online you can build this kind of skills, there are a lot of courses online, some even free. You can go on Udemy, Skillshare, Coursera, even on YouTube. There's a lot of courses online which are free. So build your skills up there first.
Yeah. Anything to add, Kenny?
A tiny advice, I think maybe to make the process easier is maybe don't think so far like a completely different industry. Try to consider things that are slightly related, and it will be easier for you to transition in rather than like jumping to a completely different one. Yeah. So because like securing a job is your main concern, right? And you already have the skills. So maybe that could be something you can think about.
Yeah, so that's all the time we have for this session, right? But for those questions that we didn't get to answer, don't worry, stick around and let you know how you can get them answered. But before that, I just want to point out that Wipro Unza is hiring. So they are the leading personal care manufacturing and marketing FMCG company. So if you're interested in any of these 4 roles that they're currently hiring, right, go to wobjobs.com/Wipro, check their company out, right? You'll probably find what you like over there. So with that being said, right, Kenny, where can those people get their questions answered?
Yeah. So for anyone who unfortunately we didn't have enough time to answer your question, or anyone who has more questions, we actually created a forum called Offwork, where it's specifically made for people to ask career advice and even share, if you have anything that you know, you can even share your own thoughts. And we have we have our team here, we have other professionals as well that will be able to give you advice, and you can ask your questions freely there. It's called Offwork. You can search on it, wobjobs.com/Offwork, or even on Facebook, you can search for Offwork by WOBB. Join us there. You can ask your questions there. We'll be there for 30 minutes. So feel free to post your questions there and we'll try to answer them as soon as we can.
Yeah, so that's it, right? See you guys at Offwork. See you for next Thursday's session, and hope to stay safe. Hope you all stay safe, right? All right, bye.
All right,
Bye.
see you guys next Thursday. Bye.
Yeah, leave a like, yeah? Bye.